Last night, my wife decided to spend time with her friends, which is something she does often. Usually, when she goes out like this, she comes back home by 1:30 in the morning. So, I stayed up a little longer, until 2 a.m., expecting her to walk through the door at any moment. When she didn't, I decided to call her just to see how she was doing. She picked up the phone and I could hear other people's voices in the background. She mentioned that they were at a party but were about to leave in a few minutes. However, when the clock showed 2:30 a.m. and she still wasn't home, I sent her a text message. She didn't reply, but the message showed it was delivered. Feeling more concerned, I tried calling her again around 3:30 a.m. But this time, after a few rings, she didn't pick up and my call went to her voicemail. Finally, at 6:39 a.m., she came home. I remember the time exactly because I was so worried about her. She was wearing a dress and some mesh leggings that were new to me. The leggings were ripped and her makeup looked like it had been messed up. Seeing her in that state made me feel very scared at first. I was afraid something bad had happened to her. When I asked her if she had been hurt, she shook her head, no. Then I asked her what had happened, and her response made my worst fears come to life. She implied that she had been cheating. She admitted to meeting someone at the club, going back to his place, and staying the night there before taking an Uber home. She seemed indifferent about the whole thing and said she didn't want to argue, she just wanted to sleep. And that's exactly what she did. She went to bed without even taking a shower and she's still sleeping now. After what happened, I'm convinced that our marriage cannot continue. We don't have children and we're renting our home, so splitting up shouldn't be too complicated. Part of me wants to find a way to make things right, but I've always felt that cheating is something I cannot accept. It seems I need to stay true to my principles and end our relationship. End of Opus's post. I absolutely agree with you. Sticking to your principles is the right move here. It seems clear that there's nothing left in this relationship to try and fix. It feels like she had an understanding of what her actions would lead to and possibly she's even aiming for a divorce. It's hard to understand why someone would do this. It seems like a very foolish decision. But the fact that she made it obvious, especially by not coming home and ignoring your calls, really speaks volumes. The way she showed up, not bothering to clean up or change, signals a blatant disregard for the situation. Normally, someone who's trying to hide their cheating might try to cover their tracks or show some concern for getting caught. However, she didn't seem to care at all about that. This is not what you would expect from someone who values their relationship. My advice: you should move forward with the divorce without hesitation. Don't exhaust yourself trying to salvage something that she, by her actions, has clearly shown she doesn't value anymore. She's made her choice, unfortunately, in a very destructive manner. I'm curious to hear what others think about this situation. If you are in his shoes, what would be your next step? Would you consider trying to fix things, maybe spend some time apart to reflect? Or would you also think that divorce is the only option left? Share your thoughts down below in the comments. Let's take a moment to dive into what our community members are sharing about this tough situation. First off, John 897 weighed in, saying, "If being faithful is a core expectation for you in a relationship, and it's completely fair to have that expectation, then it's clear that this expectation has been shattered. When your wife tries to explain her actions, perhaps blaming it on being drunk or professing her love for you, remember that these are just words. The real issue is that she has deeply hurt you by breaking your trust, and the commitment you both made to each other emphasizes that you should stand firm in your decision to leave someone who hasn't shown you the respect and loyalty you deserve." And he appreciates your response, noting how sometimes just hearing confirmation from others can be incredibly validating and helpful. He also mentions understanding your reluctance to even listen to her explanations, given the trust has been irreparably broken. Moving on, Sal34 highlights a crucial point. You might be trying to rationalize staying because the shock of the betrayal is still fresh. The pain and sense of betrayal won't just disappear once the initial shock wears off. He suggests not entertaining her attempts to explain or minimize her actions. Additionally, he advises getting an STD screening for safety, pointing out that this might not be her first lapse in judgment. Dope offers a perspective, doubting the infidelity was a repeated offense, given his wife's tendency to be open and not keep secrets. However, he acknowledges the wisdom in getting tested, despite a personal discomfort with needles, as a precaution. Lastly, Snake4576 brings a reflective angle, challenging you to think of any justification for cheating. When you realize there are none, it underscores that fidelity was a conscious choice you made because of your love and commitment. The point made is poignant. You deserve a partner who reciprocates your love and commitment. If your wife cannot offer that, her excuses are irrelevant, and your love is better invested in someone who will cherish and return it. This collection of comments from the community offers a blend of validation, practical advice, and deeper reflections on love and commitment, all aimed at supporting you through this challenging time. Another information from Opai's comments: both of our names are on the lease, which means I can't just kick her out, even though I might want to. We're stuck in this situation because our lease doesn't end for another 5 months. If I decide to leave early, I'll have to pay a fee, but financially, I can handle it, so it's not the biggest problem I have right now. I've also thought about throwing her belongings out on the street, but I know that won't make me feel any better. It's not like I'd get anything positive from causing a commotion outside. I did end up breaking a picture frame after she went to sleep, though. It was a moment of frustration, and I'm not usually someone who does things like that, but I needed to let out some anger somehow. I'm even considering finding another place to stay just for tonight. But part of me feels like it's unfair that I should have to be the one to leave. I'm really shocked and hurt right now. I need to figure out how to deal with these feelings of love when she's just destroyed our marriage. It's hard to stop thinking about how nonchalant she was about the whole thing, as if she wanted me to find out. She showed up in clothes I've never seen before, and her casual attitude felt like a betrayal. Remembering that moment is painful. The first thing she did was text her friend to say she had fun and then to let them know she got home safe. I looked through her phone and took screenshots of these messages, sending them to myself. I even tried to talk to her friend to get more of the story, though I'm not sure if that will help, considering they're close friends. It's a tough situation, and I'm trying to work through my emotions and figure out the best way to handle this. Well, the community agrees the relationship has ended, the deal has been broken, and it seems that Opai arrived at the same conclusion as I did, but for different reasons. So now it's time to move on with the first of 2 updates that Opus has given us to this story. Now, let's move on with that first update. Hello again, everyone. I'm really sorry for not being able to share this update with you all sooner. Yesterday, I couldn't get a day off because my boss isn't very understanding, so I had to go to work even though I was feeling really upset and not myself. But, luckily, things got so bad at work because of how upset I was that they let me take the rest of the week off as vacation time. That's a small silver lining because it gave me some time to deal with all my emotions. It's like I went through a whole roller coaster of feelings all while my soon-to-be ex was asleep. When I first posted my story here, I didn't think anyone would actually read it or care. I just felt so alone and needed to talk to someone, anyone, because my head was a mess. By the time it was noon, she was still sleeping and I had started to get my thoughts together a bit more. I made a list of things I needed to know from her and gathered up all my important stuff, like my laptop and all my important papers. Then I decided to start packing a bag for myself. I know a lot of you said I should kick her out, but honestly, I don't really care much about this apartment. We're just renting it, and I'm lucky enough to be in a position where I can afford to pay my share of the rent for a few more months without it ruining me financially. It's going to hurt my wallet a bit, sure, but I'll survive. Plus, being in this apartment just keeps reminding me of her, and I need to start moving on with my life. She woke up while I was in the middle of packing my bag. At first, she looked around, kind of confused, and then she just started crying really hard. I might sound mean, but I didn't try to comfort her. I just told her straight up that I had seen the messages and the Uber receipts on her phone, and that was all I needed to know to end things between us. She just cried even more then, but I didn't try to talk anymore. I just finished packing and went to wait in the living room until she was ready to come out and talk. Eventually, she did come out to the living room and sat down next to me on the couch. She asked if we could talk things over, but I told her calmly that we weren't just going to have a chat. I needed real, honest answers from her. She said she would tell the truth, so I started asking her the questions I had even though I was shaking the whole time. Keeping myself together was a huge struggle, but I pushed through. I needed to know if this was her first time stepping out on our relationship. Before she even spoke, tears were streaming down her face. Then she admitted that no, this wasn't the first time. She had been unfaithful multiple times throughout our relationship. She described it as, in her exact words, just sex, a way for me to let off steam. She insisted that none of these encounters meant anything to her. I remember writing in a comment after I first posted my story that I couldn't imagine all the love we shared just disappearing all at once. But in that moment I felt it all slip away. The woman I was talking to wasn't the person I married, she was someone else entirely. She wouldn't tell me how many times she had been unfaithful, only that it was more than just last night. When I asked if she had been safe, if she had used protection, she quickly nodded, seeming almost shocked that I would question it. Regardless, I'm not taking any chances and plan to get tested for STIs as a precaution. I've looked into when to get tested and will be following through with that. Curiosity got the better of me, and I asked if her friends were also cheating on their partners. Her answer was a mix of yes and no. I wanted her to tell me which friends were being unfaithful so I could alert their partners, but she refused. That refusal prompted me to reach out to the partners of all her friends that I could find on social media. There were a few I couldn't reach, but I tried to do my part. I didn't accuse anyone outright. I simply shared my own situation and mentioned that she had indicated some of her friends might be doing the same. My hope is that I didn't cause harm to any innocent parties, but I felt the need to take that risk. The reason she gave for her actions struck me the hardest. She said she needed sexual variety, and that our sex life, despite not being dull, couldn't satisfy her need for something new. This response blindsided me. I was expecting excuses about me not being around enough or not being emotionally supportive. But instead she admitted to seeking out other men simply for the thrill of it, for fun. Regarding the change of clothes she wore that day, she claimed she borrowed them from a friend so they could match, which sounded like a flimsy excuse at best. When I asked why she chose now to stop hiding her actions, her only response was that she got caught up in the moment. There's definitely more to the story, but she's not sharing, and frankly, I'm past the point of wanting to dig deeper. After I didn't react, she brought up the idea of going to counseling or therapy. I made it clear to her again that our relationship was over and that I was going to leave. What happened next really upset me. My ex tried to initiate sex with me, touching me and attempting to remove my clothes. The feeling of disgust was overwhelming and I had to physically push her away. Despite my clear rejection, she kept insisting that she could fix everything and that we could work through this together. I told her it was impossible and she broke down crying once more, then locked herself in the bathroom. By then I was thoroughly fed up with the whole situation. I decided to call her mom and tell her everything that had happened, including the cheating, the conversations we had, and my decision to leave. I've always had a decent relationship with her parents. Upon hearing what was going on, they immediately decided to make the hour-long drive to our place. Knowing they were on their way gave me the push I needed to finally leave. Her crying in the bathroom sounded so empty and performative to me, especially after the answers she gave to my questions. I couldn't tell if her tears were because I was leaving or because her deceit was being uncovered and her carefully constructed facade was falling apart. Part of me hoped she felt some remorse about me leaving, but her actions left me with little doubt. Before I left, I packed another bag with items that held sentimental value to me. Then, I found a parking lot where I could sit in my car, trying to contact a friend for a place to stay. I attempted to take a nap, but the adrenaline and emotions were too much. Her parents must have arrived at the apartment because she began calling and then texting me non-stop when I didn't answer. Her messages quickly turned from tearful pleas to anger. She even called me a terrible person for sharing everything with her mom. But I don't regret making that call. They're close and I didn't want her to be alone. Plus, I needed someone there to prevent me from getting drawn back into the mess. Since leaving, I've received a barrage of texts from her, ranging from insults to desperate pleas for me to return and even photos of what she's eating. It's been an overwhelming whirlwind of emotions, but I'm trying to navigate this as best as I can, keeping a distance and focusing on moving forward. For some reason I haven't replied to any of her messages. I feel like I've already said everything that needed to be said before I walked out. That's where things stand at the moment. Luckily, we didn't share bank accounts or anything like that, so splitting up our finances was straightforward. I went ahead and canceled any subscriptions that were charged to my credit card just to make sure there were no loose ends. And I updated all my important passwords to keep things secure. Right now, I'm staying on a friend's couch, but I'm actively looking for a short-term rental to have my own space while I figure out a more permanent living situation. I've also started looking for a divorce lawyer. A co-worker recommended one, so unless I find a better option, I'm likely going to go with their suggestion. I also want to express how amazed and grateful I am for the support from everyone here. Thank you truly, from the bottom of my heart. It's not easy for me to open up about personal and emotional issues, even with people I'm close to. Sharing my story here and receiving so much understanding and advice has been incredibly helpful and comforting. Thank you all so much for being such a supportive community during this difficult time. This update marks the end of this chapter for me. End of the update. Hey there Opus, I really hope this message comes across the right way. I just want to say that all things considered, you're handling this tough situation pretty well. It's clear you've been through a lot, but it seems like you've managed to get some clarity on things that were bothering you. You got the answers to your questions, even if they weren't the ones you were hoping for. But they've definitely helped point you in the right direction for what comes next. I also really want to highlight how impressive it is that you've kept your distance after that final conversation with her. You haven't picked up the phone to call her and you haven't sent any messages. That's really strong of you. It shows a lot of self-control and determination to stick to your decision even when it's hard. So yeah, I just want to say well done on that front, Opus. You're doing a good job handling a situation that's far from easy. Now I'm really looking forward to hearing the last part of your story. It sounds like you've been through quite the journey and I'm eager to see where you've ended up after all this. You've shown a lot of courage and resilience so far, so I'm hopeful for you as we await the final update. Let's see how things have unfolded for you in the end. So now it's time to move on to the final update, to the story, to see how it ends. Final update. Hey everyone, I'm here with what I'm calling the last update to a chapter of my life that has been incredibly challenging. I've felt a huge wave of support from all of you since I first shared my story, and I wanted to close this chapter with an update for you all. The big news is that my ex and I have officially signed the divorce papers this week. It's a strange feeling, still fresh and somewhat unreal, just 2 weeks after everything started to unravel. There was a bit of a hiccup at the start. She became uncooperative and started ignoring my lawyer's attempts to communicate for a while. But eventually we managed to get everything back on track. Regarding the cheating, there's not much more I can tell you that I haven't already. We went through a brief mediation process and it was clear to me then that she didn't have any real remorse for her actions. I've been unpacking a lot of these feelings with a therapist. Yes, I've started seeing one. It's been tough coming to terms with the fact that someone I believe loved me could show so little regard for me in the end. Working through this has been both liberating and frightening. There's a sense of relief in having this weight lifted off my shoulders, but the uncertainty of what's ahead is daunting. Yet I find myself feeling hopeful and somewhat excited about the future. I've had a few more conversations with her parents since everything happened. They were brief and not very detailed, but it was clear they were just as taken aback by the situation as I was and unsure of how to navigate their relationship with me moving forward. In a ripple effect, 2 other relationships came to an end because of the revelations. I had brief talks with both of the other guys involved who found out about their own situations in different ways after I gave them a heads up. It's been a messy situation, but ultimately it feels like it's for the best for all of us. And that's about everything I have to share for now. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to everyone here for your advice, support, and kind words throughout this process. This is the end of my final update. Well, Opie, even though you've been through some really tough times, it seems like there's a silver lining to this update. It's kind of a relief to hear that not only has your marriage with your ex-wife, who sadly turned out to be unfaithful, come to an end, but also that 2 other relationships, which were suffering from similar issues of infidelity, have also come to a close. It's definitely a positive thing that all the dishonesty has been brought to light. It gives everyone involved a chance to start fresh and move on from the betrayal. I'm really hoping the best for you as you step into this new chapter of your life. It's not easy to rebuild after such a betrayal, but it sounds like you're on the right path. Take care of yourself, and thanks a lot for being open and sharing your story with us. It's been a journey, and your strength through it all is commendable. Now, shifting gears to another interesting story I came across. This next post comes from the subreddit Malicious Compliance, and it's titled Lawn Karen. Let's dive into what this story has in store and see what kind of update has been shared. I earn my bread and butter by keeping landscapes tidy, mainly for businesses and folks with a bit more money to their name. And let me tell you, it's often the well-off homeowners who give me the most headaches. The stories I could tell you from the odd and extravagant demands they make could fill a book. Not too long ago, I took on a new client. Let's call her Karen, because, well, that's actually her name. My first trip to her place was just yesterday. I had scoped out her property on Google Maps beforehand and estimated the job would take about an hour. However, when I got there, the scene was nothing short of a disaster. It looked like no one had touched the yard in ages. I ended up spending twice the time I planned, a whole 2 hours, to get it looking anywhere close to respectable. I pruned a bunch of palm trees, shaped up the bushes, mowed the lawn, did some edging, and cleared away all the fallen leaves. But, wouldn't you know it, Karen rang up my company not long after I left, complaining about the job. She claimed I had lazily blown leaves into a corner of her yard and left them there, which was total nonsense. The leaves she was talking about had been sitting in that corner for so long they were practically part of the landscape, mixed into the pine straw. Normally, I clear out any loose leaves from the flower beds and either mulch them or bag them up, which is exactly what I did. But Karen wasn't having any of it. She wouldn't listen to my explanation and demanded that I send someone over to pick up the remaining leaves, so I went back and I didn't just pick up the leaves. I cleared out practically all of the pine straw. To about 75% of it as expected. Karen was on the phone again shortly after, this time upset over her mysteriously vanishing pine straw. I reminded her of our previous conversation and offered to replace the pine straw, but at a cost of $400. I'm still waiting to hear back from her on that one. Alright, so here's the deal. Karen wanted those leaves gone, and guess what? You did exactly that. But oh, the pine straw decided to tag along for the ride, and suddenly Karen's got an issue with its disappearance. Well, if she's looking to get that pine straw back, she's got to be willing to cough up the cash at your asking price. You literally did what she asked for, to the letter. Now, since we're diving into the realm of malicious compliance here, I'd usually advise steering clear of the comments section. But Opus did chip in with a few gems of their own, so let's dig into those. Hugh Moon chimes in with a perspective that any landscaper who's worked with the well-to-do can relate to. This kind of situation is par for the course. It seems like the folks with the most cash are often the ones least willing to part with it, especially when it means paying for extra work they didn't initially sign up for. You show up for a routine job, and suddenly they want you to perform miracles without wanting to pay extra. Oh, while you're here, can you do this incredibly specific task that requires special equipment? I refuse to pay for. Next thing you know, they're nitpicking over the smallest details just to dodge the bill. Hugh Moon recalls a client who complained about the grass not being cut up to the invisible property line she couldn't even pinpoint herself. And then Op adds to the chorus with a story of their own. A client expected them to deal with a decaying armadillo in her backyard, as if it were just another line item on the landscaping checklist. The thing had been decomposing for days, left as if it were the landscaper's duty to dispose of it during the regular yard maintenance visit. When Op politely declined, citing that it wasn't their job, the lady claimed her husband was too ill to handle it himself. But lo and behold, the mention of refusal seemed to miraculously cure him, as he promptly came out to clean it up, visibly annoyed, as if Opus had some obligation to deal with it. Despite the absurdity and occasional frustrations, the pay from these clients is too good, and their proximity to Opus's other job sites makes it hard to just walk away. People sure can be astonishing. Opus chimed in with some additional thoughts that really put things into perspective. If Karen was already showing signs of being incredibly difficult to work with from day one, when Opus went above and beyond, dedicating more time than initially planned, it was a clear indicator that things were likely to go downhill from there. Someone pointed out that Karen's property might have been neglected for so long because she's probably burned through local lawn care services unwilling to tolerate her demands. That speculation hit the nail on the head. Dealing with a bit of nonsense here and there is part and parcel of the job, especially considering what some clients are willing to pay. Opus is usually quite accommodating and can put on a happy face to navigate through the minor annoyances. However, there's a limit to everything. Opus has the advantage of being selective, often weeding out the particularly troublesome clients. It's a luxury not all businesses can afford, but it's crucial for maintaining sanity in a line of work that can sometimes test your patience to the extreme. The consensus seems to be that no self-respecting lawn care service would put up with the kind of unreasonable demands Karen was making. It might be time for her to start looking for alternatives. Perhaps she should consider turning to the local hardware store, picking up a lawnmower, and hitting the internet for some DIY lawn care tutorials. It's either that, or learning to adjust her expectations when working with professionals. So, with Opus's insights wrapping up the discussion on this high-maintenance client, it's time to see where this saga ends. Let's dive into the update and find out how Opus navigated out of this thicket of thorns, and what lessons were learned along the way. Update. So, about a week after the whole saga I shared with you all initially, I got a call from none other than Karen herself. She was on the line, wondering if I was still up for doing that pine straw job for $1.40. I didn't have a problem with doing the work, but I was curious. I asked her why she'd want to hire me again, especially after making it pretty clear she wasn't happy with my previous work. Turns out, Karen had managed to wear out her welcome with not one, not two, but 3 other landscaping companies in our area, and was now struggling to find anyone willing to take on her yard. My guess, those companies probably decided they'd had enough of her impossible standards and showed her the door. Despite knowing this, I went ahead and did the pine straw job that morning. After I was done, she seemed satisfied enough to ask if I would be interested in doing biweekly maintenance for her going forward. I had to turn her down politely, and when she pressed me for a reason I just gave it to her straight. Dealing with her was proving to be a bit too much, as she tended to be on the unreasonable side of things. She didn't take my honesty too well, but at least she paid for the work I did that day, and I was out of there. For anyone wondering why I'd even consider going back after everything, well, it boiled down to a simple calculation. The job was an easy $200 in my pocket for just an hour's work, so in my mind it was a no-brainer. Why not, right? End of the update. Well, Opie, honestly, I gotta say, it's pretty awesome that you're in a position where you can just say no to clients who bring nothing but trouble. Seriously, who needs that kind of stress in their life? Certainly not you. Thanks a ton for sharing your story with us, Opie. It's been quite the ride hearing about your adventures. And that wraps up today's video, folks. A huge thank you to everyone who stuck around and watched this far. If you've enjoyed the tales I've been telling, chances are you'll like some of the other stories I've got lined up. So go ahead and check them out when you've got a moment.